say. So I brought along some really neat colleagues from the State Department. And I know that there are one, two, three colleagues, and I think I saw a fourth colleague join. I'm not sure. I might have seen Gail Hawkins join as well. But we're going to talk to you a little bit about what it's like to work for the State Department. And we're happy to answer any questions about a career path. What is a possible career path that would lead to work in the State Department or would maybe lead elsewhere? And I'm looking at my colleagues here trying to figure out a neat format. I'll think about that while we do it. That's one part of of diplomacy and foreign services. Sometimes we'll kind of assess the situation and just as we go along. So just a little bit about the office that we're affiliated with. It's the Office of Citizen Exchanges. And I've already gone into the bureaucracy. Sheesh, I'm already starting to use bureaucratic terms. But we're the office within the State Department that is in charge of a lot of exchange programs. That's moving people between America and the rest of the world, moving people to move ideas. And of course, since last March, it's been very, very virtual. It's been really, really different. And so three of us are from right now within Citizen Exchanges, and Jasmine recently worked in Citizen Exchanges as an intern, and now she's involved in a very exciting program while doing graduate school at the same time. I'd like to hear about that, called the Pickering program. So I can, okay, here's a really neat point that Jennifer, my colleague, suggested would be a good way to explain what we do. Except I've got to be extremely serious for this. By the way, this is like the second time that I have worn a jacket and tie since COVID. A lot of us have been on maximum telework. So I was really actually excited to put on a necktie and dress up for you all today. So the Department of State is responsible for US foreign policy and international affairs, and it's comprised of civil service, foreign service, and contractors working in nearly 40 bureaus. That's like parts, and over 250 embassies and consulates in 180 countries around the world. So that's what the State Department does. We represent America, we protect Americans, and we advocate for US interests. And at the same time, we also build alliances and partnerships, and particularly in the office that I work at, we try to build bridges of understanding. So I think I would actually like to have my colleagues talk a little bit about themselves, if I may, and what led them to be here tonight. Tell us your entire lives and maybe like a couple of minutes. We want to allow a lot of time for Q&A. Tell us your entire lives for a couple of minutes and what led you to the big decision to not only pursue a career in public service, but international service as well. And I would like to turn, because I've got the tiles here. I don't know how you all have the tiles arranged. And Jasmine is to my, let's mix it up. Is it camera, stage left, stage right? Anyway, Jasmine is to my right, and then Ashley is right there, and then Jennifer is kind of diagonal. Jennifer, did you know that you're going to speak today? I don't know if you knew that or not. But anyway, let's hear about Jasmine's exciting story, and then we'll hear about Dr. Ashley's. Then we'll hear Jennifer Conrad and Gail Hawkins. If you're in the audience, text me to let me know, and then please speak as well. And then I'll finish off talking a couple minutes about what led me into this crazy career, and then we'll hear your questions and answers. Is that okay? Okay, all right, great. Jasmine McLam.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good evening, good day, depending on where you're located. I think my interest in state really started in high school. So, in high school, I was part of a magnet program called the Global Studies Academy. And in that program, we were tasked with learning about other cultures and also studying a foreign language for 4 years. And through that program, I learned about State Department exchanges that US citizens can apply for and go on. And so I had the opportunity during one summer to do a month-long exchange in Ecuador, which was the first time that I ever really talked about or heard about the State Department, what it did, and it was the first time I met a US ambassador. So after that, my interest just grew in learning about different cultures. And so in undergrad, I attended a university called Spelman College, located in Atlanta, Georgia. And there I earned my Bachelor of Arts in International Studies in Spanish. And while there, I got the opportunity to travel abroad. I interned at State within the youth exchanges. I did a lot of political and advocacy campaigns and also participated in different weekends and also applied to a lot of different fellowships. So after my internship at State, I realized that I really wanted to come back and work at State. And the State Department has fellowship opportunities for students from minority backgrounds or underrepresented backgrounds who want to pursue a career in diplomacy. So the three programs are the Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellowship, the Charles B. Rangel International Affairs Fellowship, and the Payne Development Fellowship. And these three fellowships help you gain a fast track into the Foreign Service and also help you fund your graduate school. So I am a 2020 Thomas R. Pickering Fellow. And right now I'm earning my MPA at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. I'm studying urban and social policy and specializing in gender and public policy. So I can talk about getting to grad school, more about how, what programs or what internships you should apply for, what you should do starting in college in order to make your application or your resume stand out. So I'm happy to talk more about that. And actually, I'm going to drop in the chat this document that I received in college that was super, super helpful for me and mapping out my college career and what I wanted and how I could achieve my goal of working at State. So.
Jasmine, that's great. So you are going to be our designated resource person for how you did it, and in particular, how you took the foreign service path. And I was just thinking maybe I can talk, because I've been in for a while. I can talk a little bit about what it's like being a foreign service officer, the good and the bad points, a little bit about being overseas, a little bit about the mindset. And our next speaker is Dr. Ashley Huffman. And like I've been saying, State Department, some people tend to think, oh, well, it's going to receptions and then it's packing up your bags and going somewhere else and things like that. But in reality, it's a really complex mosaic of people who work together. So foreign service is one particular part, but another absolutely essential part is the civil service, the real experts. Frankly, in my mind, the people actually get things done and do really. But anyway, so Ashley will talk a little bit about what it was like, and you joined the civil service fairly recently. So tell us about some of the things before that, and then tell us about how you joined and what you're doing now, just to give a sample. And Gail Hawkins is on the line. So then, Jennifer, are you thinking about what you're going to say? I'm putting you on the spot.
I am, yes.
Okay, good. And then we'll hear from Gail as well. Okay, thank you. So now here's Dr. Ashley Huffman.
All right, thanks, Robert. I appreciate that. And Jasmine, if I could just give you one of those, amazing, amazing. I'm just so proud of you, and I loved hearing your story. As Robert said, I'm Dr. Ashley Huffman. I am actually today, celebrating my 1-year anniversary at the State Department. So it was 1 year ago this January that I was hired as a civil servant, and it's been an amazing dream come true. You know, I'll be honest with you, I came from a very small town in West Virginia, population about 800. You know, Appalachia. I went to a school called Polka High School, where our mascot, we were the Dots. So I was a polka dot. And when you are a fierce mascot like a dot, you really, the aspiration level and the expectation for your life is maybe not Capitol Hill, is maybe not international relations. And so I feel extremely lucky because through the sport of basketball, I was able to go to college on a scholarship. And really from there, I just learned so much about the world and dreams, the dreams that I had, that the world could be so much bigger than just the small town in which I lived. And so the woman that I am, the leader that I am, the things that you can learn through sports, like resilience and teamwork and goal setting and communication, and the importance of diversity and how that makes a team work. You don't have 5 point guards, you don't have 5 centers, you have 5 different people that look different with different skills, and that's what makes a great basketball team. And that's what I knew I wanted to achieve in life. I wanted to, to be honest, I had this college basketball experience that was horrible. I had a lot of injury, and the coach it was kind of a nightmare situation. But then shortly after that, I was asked to go on a basketball exchange trip to China. And we were going to play 6 different universities as sort of like a basketball tour: Wuhan, Beijing, Shanghai. And in that moment, I learned that this orange ball was a connector. It was something that built bridges between people. It was a universal language. And it could be so much more powerful than what it had been used for in previous iterations in my life. And, I learned in that moment that even though I'd had a bad college experience, sport wasn't bad. It's what people in positions of power do with it. And if someone can make my life miserable, I can make someone else's life great, and I can ensure that other little girls around the world have access and they have opportunities, and that we can build peace through sport. And so for me, it was a really powerful tool. I took that step, that dream. I had no idea the career path. I feel like the State Department was the most wonderful accident in my life. To be honest, I pursued a master's degree and a PhD. I took my first trip to China in 2005, and then started studying Israeli and Palestinian relations and held a peace camp there through sport, and then worked with girls in Zimbabwe that were victims of sexual assault. And then, it just spiraled from there. And so I went on to earn my PhD and became a professor. And I opened a Center for Sport, Peace, and Society there at the University of Tennessee, and really came to understand through the research the power of sport in the diplomatic realm. Started working with state on various iterations of projects as an implementing partner. So when the State Department would call, then we would go out. I would go out as a sports envoy. I've taught basketball in, I think, 35 countries now, all across the world, different regions, and not just basketball, women's empowerment, disability rights and inclusion. And so I feel very fortunate to work in this field and in this space, and then just went on from that, from being an implementing partner, being the one going, to now being the one sending, the one working with leagues and federations to find athletes, to find young.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashley. I had a thought as I was hearing you speaking, and also Jasmine, just thinking about my own life and career path. Sometimes when you think of State Department, or I don't know if there are any international students on the screen, think of your foreign ministry, you think of people who are basically have gotten there, they've been delivered, their life has been on rails, and it's been all set. They've come from a certain background, then they go to a certain high school, usually a very special high school, and then a very, very fancy college, and they have all these connections, and that's the only way into their particular foreign ministry. It's more through what they were born into, and relationships and institutions were preset for them. Well, the wonderful thing about State Department and other aspects of federal employment, it really is the fact that you come from different backgrounds, different paths, that you pursue different tracks to get where you are, that makes the team really kind of fun and exciting, and makes the mission more purposeful, and kind of just helps to send a message about what America is all about. Now, there's still some people who may fit more of a traditional stereotype. For example, I met a man named, I think it was like John Quincy Adams, the something, whatever he was, the fourth or the fifth. And he was the great, 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 great nephew of a certain other John Quincy Adams. And he actually worked for State Department. But that man got teased terribly. He got teased terribly, and he had a really good sense of humor. So anyway, just any myth busting in case anybody had that preconception. Let's go now to hear Jennifer Conrad, and you've had hours and days to think about what you're going to say, right? Instead of like 5 minutes, but you have a very interesting story too. And then we'll hear from Gail Hawkins.
Thanks, Robert. Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Conrad. My story is a little bit different than anyone else's I've heard. My husband was in the military, and so we moved around a lot. We had kids kind of on the young side, not super young. And so moving around a lot, I didn't have a career set yet. I didn't really even know what I wanted to do. I was taking care of my kids, working part-time jobs here and there. Um, and then I started going to school part time. So my college career spans like 14 years, 5 different schools in 4 different states. And so in 2016, when I was at my 4th school in my 3rd state, maybe, I was on a career path to be an occupational therapist. And so I was finishing up my psychology degree. And a study abroad opportunity came up to Uganda. And I thought, that's amazing. I have to do this. And it fulfilled like 3 different classes that I needed. And so I did it. And it was a 2-week study abroad to Uganda. It was, cross-cultural psychology and sociology classes. And it just completely opened my eyes to what exchanges can do and study abroad. And I really just fell in love with it. And then my husband had a career change, and that brought us out to the DC area. And so I had to change schools yet again. And my psychology credits didn't fit in with the psychology programs in the area. And so I changed my major to just a Bachelor of Arts and so I had 2 concentrations instead of 1 major. And so I did humanities and behavioral sciences. And at my school in Marymount, Arlington, Virginia, we had to do an internship to graduate. And so I looked through the list of where other Marymount students had gone to intern, and the State Department popped up. And I thought, oh, that would be really cool. So I started reading through the mission statements of the different bureaus, and I came across ECA, and it just really spoke to me. And I thought, I have to do this. And it turns out I had 1 day until applications were due. And so I, hustled and worked my tail off and got my application in, and I got the internship. And so I interned for the State Department in ECA's policy office in the fall of 2017. And I just felt like I was at home. And so I knew after I graduated, I really wanted to come back to the State Department. And so I graduated the next spring. And then by summer, I saw my job pop up as a contractor job. And so I started out as a contractor, and I worked as a contractor for a little over a year. And then my actual job that I'm still currently doing opened up as a civilian government service job. And so I got that job too. And it's been fantastic. My favorite job, my dream job that I never knew I had. So that's my story.
That's great, and that's a really neat way to capture it. The dream job that you never knew that you might have.
Yeah.
Hey, and by the way, this might answer a question. I've seen at least one question submitted in advance about what to study and what to major. You've heard from 3 different foreign affairs professionals, and have you heard anybody say that they majored in the works of Henry Kissinger and international relations theory? When I heard occupational therapy, psychology, sports, urban planning, or urban issues, it's different. Like I was saying before, if you were aspiring for a foreign ministry of another country, for example, I served in Korea, and Korea has changed over the years, but a generation ago, you had to study a lot of foreign languages. You had to study international relations. US system's a little bit different. I think the Korean system is also diversifying as well, because the idea is if you have everybody who studied the same thing, the same basic concepts, and they get together and they're around the table and they have to think of a bunch of different ideas to solve a really serious problem, will they necessarily come up with different ideas? or it'll be different shades of the same idea because they had the same major or the same backgrounds or things like that. So once again, you see that. Let's hear now from Gail Hawkins, who is our Chief Resilience Officer, also our office manager. She's president of a Toastmasters chapter. And Gail, you had, gosh, you must have about 10 seconds of preparation because I just said, hey, would you like to come on and speak to the students? Gail, just so you know, we have at least my largest audience. It's several hundred. There are at least several hundred, and I think a couple of thousand have signed up to eventually look at the archived webinar. So with all that, no pressure.
Wow, good evening and thank you, Robert. I apologize for being off camera. I can't control the video, but I'm happy to be here to share my little experience as being employed at the State Department, which has become, like Jennifer, my dream job. I took the more scenic route to get here. I was happily a stay-at-home mom, taking care of my children. And in 2007, there was this thing called the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative. Well, shortly before that, following 9/11, 2001, things changed and you needed a passport to leave the United States, even if you were crossing the borders of Canada and Mexico. So they were hiring passport specialists. And in 2007, I got hired. And it has changed my life. I started in the Bureau of Consular Affairs as a passport specialist. And after 10 years of being a passport specialist and working with citizens abroad, helping them as well as citizens in the US secure that document, I took the position in ECA, Educational and Cultural Affairs, and it was a full circle moment. Before I got married, I had an opportunity to go and study abroad in Sudan. I turned that job down for a wedding proposal. And now, while I'm not abroad, I still get to do what I would have been doing, helping people here and abroad. And being able to meet our exchange participants, being able to help them secure that J1 visa and help you while you're here visiting the United States at the State Department, it has afforded me an opportunity to share my experiences, how I've come up less traditional in my career, help children, young adults, my kids as well, come to the State Department and share in the exchange programs with a lot of the participants, but to work with our interns. It was so exciting when I saw Jasmine as an intern a couple years ago at the State Department, and I got to put my Toastmaster skills to use and share in the storytelling. I am a storyteller, and you all are storytellers. And after you've had an exchange experience studying abroad, or if you're from abroad, coming to the United States studying abroad, you have a story to tell. And I was afforded the opportunity, thanks to our director, Robert, to help our exchange participants. They had studied abroad in Beijing, in Morocco, and various places in Germany, and I helped them package their experience into a neat story. And it was a great opportunity for me to grow as a public speaker and as a Toastmaster, and to find my niche in my career, my civil service career at the State Department. So however you get here, have fun, make the most of it, and I can't wait to meet you. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you very much, Gail. And I really appreciate and so much enjoyed hearing each of you. And now, Jennifer, I understand you are our question and answer moderator here.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So give all the tough questions to everybody else because I won't be able to answer
All
those.
right. First question is, how do you get to become a U.S. ambassador?
So the question is, how do you go from where you are right now, which is maybe you're seniors, maybe you're juniors, maybe you're recently out of high school, and you were probably like super, I mean, just the fact that you're on this webinar, you're probably like super achievers. How do you go from where you are right now to a position where you are in public service, beyond that you're in international service, and you're a top representative for the US? And if there are any international students, I would just, top representative for your home country. Because really that's what an official ambassador is. Official ambassador is normally overseas. There are some There are some people who have a special ambassadorial job at the main headquarters, but usually we think of somebody who is overseas, who is representing America to an entire country. How do you get from where you're at now to there? Couple of things. The first is this kind of odd theme that you've heard me talk about, is being a little bit loose in terms of what you are going to study, what jobs you are going to take up to the point where you join the State Department or join a foreign ministry. On the other hand, a little bit focused. And like I said, I think just the fact that you are part of the NSHSS means that you have the focused part already in hand. So the next important thing to have is to be able to say to yourself, am I going to be happy at each stage along the way? Because I have met some people who are very, very senior, who are not, here I am kind of being judgy, but who are not necessarily happy people because they've always thought of the next step beyond. It was what will truly satisfy, what will truly make them happy. On the one hand. On the other hand, I met people who have had no big aspirations to try to be ambassador or secretary of state, but have tried to find joy in each of the jobs that they do and at each level, and found joy in college as well. And they were, frankly, I think that those people are not only personally, they feel like they have a more meaningful and fulfilled life. I think that they're also able just to naturally kind of share that positivity and energy with colleagues and lift up colleagues as well. So anyway, it's a long path from here to there, but be happy at each stage along the way. And if I could, I'll get a little bit broader even and say, I know that we're all talking about the State Department or work at a foreign ministry, or broader than that, work in international service. But I'd like to suggest to you that to stay even looser and have a passion for building your community and connecting with your world. Have a passion for public service. So that means that you won't necessarily end up pursuing the path of being a civil service or a foreign service international affairs expert. You might end up doing something very differently, or you might end up working for a non-governmental organization. You might find yourself actually doing something that's in science, or that's in business, or in journalism, or education as well. But if you have that mentality, I'm in it, yeah, okay, I'm in it for the fun and for the meaning, having a meaningful life and great relationships, but I'm in it to build up my community, to make my community more resilient, to help make connections between my community and the bigger world. You'll be really happy. So, okay, that I went really wide there. I went from becoming an ambassador to somebody who can also serve their community and serve their world, whether they're a veterinarian or an ichthyologist or an athlete.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, next one. This question is, what opportunities are available for minorities at the Department of State? Are there HBCU focused programs? Does the Department of State partner with any schools? So any of our panelists are welcome to take that one, or all of them.
So I can take this. So for my undergrad, I did graduate from an HBCU, which is a historically Black college or university. And some of the programs that I partaked in, well, the main one is the Pickering Fellowship, which is a fellowship that helps you get a fast track into the Foreign Service. So for some background, to enter the Foreign Service can be a long process that entails getting in, taking the exam and then an oral exam. And this fellowship helps minorities or underrepresented groups get a fast track into the Foreign Service while also obtaining your master's degree. So this is one program, as well as the Rangel fellowship program, which is essentially the same thing, which helps minority students get into the Foreign Service. So for internships, if you want to, in college, if you want to intern at the Department of State, one thing is that most of the internships are not funded. There is one program now, I believe it's the Foreign Service Internship Program, that's really highly selected, that college students can partake in, that will pay for your internship experience. But mine was unpaid. One way I was able to fund my internship experience is that there are different groups at the State Department, which are called affinity groups, which foreign service officers and civil servants are a part of, and they help fund, they can help fund or sponsor interns. So while I was at State, I achieved a grant from the Thursday Luncheon Group, which is basically the Black affinity group at State, also sponsored by the Black Ambassadors Association. And that I think they gave me, I believe, $2,000 towards my summer internship, as well as the Council of American Ambassadors is another program that helps, was another organization that helps interns pay for their internship. And so this organization is, so ambassadors can be appointed or career ambassadors, and this is an organization of appointed political ambassadors that help interns pay for their internship. So those are just some of the programs that I did while I was a student that helped me pay or pave my way into the State Department. And another program that I want to mention is the Charles B. Rangel Summer Enrichment Program. So these are scholars, and it's again targeted toward minority or underrepresented backgrounds. And this is basically just a summer enrichment program. You take classes, you meet with ambassadors and foreign service officers, and just it gives you just a touch in the pool of international affairs. So those are just some of the programs that I wanted to mention that I took a part in.
That's great, Jasmine. And there's also, I believe, a virtual internship, which is really good. Frankly, it is a problem that there are not fully funded and supported internship programs. And like Jasmine mentioned, there are employee groups that try to fund and do scholarships. But hopefully in the future, there will be more of that. You know, I started with actually another agency called the U.S. Information Agency in the late 1980s, and we were merged in with State, but of course worked right alongside State Department colleagues for many years. And I can truly say that the face of the State Department has just changed profoundly in one generation. And frankly, we still have a long way to go to be able to be truly representative of America. But compared to a generation ago, where I would often be at meetings and there would be no females, I would be the only minority face there, and of course I was warmly welcomed and everything. But it has really changed over the years. So very good question. Thank you. And I put down a little link called www.careers.state.gov that lists some of the programs that Jasmine mentioned, and that talks about the different kinds of opportunities, whether it's civil service or foreign service, and then different kinds of specialties. For those who are thinking about their foreign service, there's even like a sample exam. And it's kind of fun to look around. And like I said, just use it to kind of like guide you somewhat. But the wonderful thing is you have 4 years, or if you're a junior in high school, what's that, 5 years ahead to think about what you want to do in life. So it's kind of neat to be able to have this as a possibility. And if you're able to do a virtual internship or regular internship to see firsthand, that's even better.
Right, thank you. There are several questions about foreign languages. If you need to know a foreign language, if you need to be fluent in a foreign language, maybe you could speak on that.
Sure.
If that's a requirement or if it helps you out.
Well, there's another way that the American diplomatic service is different from other foreign ministries, and it kind of reflects what we're like as Americans, even though America is changing, which is new. There is no foreign language requirement, and people are always surprised because for other countries' foreign ministries, you have to be like a polyglot, right? You have to be polylingual. And the U.S. has, of course, traditionally been very monolingual. Now, wonderfully, more and more people are learning other languages, and people are growing up with other, heritage languages in the U.S. But if you are the person who asked that, if you're sweating it because it's really hard doing French right now in high school, that's okay. Because who knows, in college, you might end up really, really enjoying and finding a different way. My true confession is that I dropped out of French in like 8th grade because the teacher said I could not say the word for library in French. I realize now that teacher, that's not the way. You don't demand perfection on the first day. Anyway, it scared me. I dropped out and do foreign languages for a couple of years. But if you're going to go to a country or work in a portfolio that requires a language, there is a wonderful training institute that is part of the State Department, the Foreign Service Institute. And you can probably Google it and look it up and see what that's like. But yeah, it's like full-time language training, and just as important, area studies, cultural studies. So you get to know the region, and you get to know that country specifically, but you kind of get to know a little bit deeper than just like the current world events and political facts and treaties. Of course, those are very important, but really good area studies just helps take you into the mind of a person who grew up with a very, very different experience, a very, very different set of life challenges and community and national challenges as well. So. On the other hand, I'm sorry, the other part of the question was, can it help? Yes, it can help. Yes, it can. And there are people who have joined in recent years, for example, who speak incentive languages, and that list changes over time. But at one point, Mandarin, I think that still is an incentive language that really needed Chinese speakers, or really needed Spanish speakers, or Arabic speakers, for example. So that actually does help your candidacy if you do happen to have some language knowledge. Definitely does not hurt, and it really helps actually if you can. The earlier that you can learn a language, if you haven't in high school, if you are really thinking about some kind of international service, if you can study a language in college, that's really good. But pick a program. If you're thinking about practical work, whether with State Department or the United Nations or Bread for the World or whatever organization, try to pick a program where it's practical. It's wonderful, learning really, really deep grammar or reading literature, but to have something where it's a small number of students and you're actually speaking, and you're processing actively, listening actively, and you're making it something that's alive. If you can get into a program like that, you'll be much better off.
Thank you, Robert. All right, this next one I'm going to pass to Ashley because Ashley actually got to interview Kevin Love for her job. And I'm a Cleveland fan because I'm from that area. So I'll pass this one to her because it's exciting. So what is a typical day in your work life like? What is the best and worst part of your job? And an add-on is it dangerous? Which I think for civil service, I would say no, but I'll let Ashley take this, and then if anyone else wants to add on, then that's great.
All right, awesome. Yes, I did get to interview Kevin Love. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure I have the coolest job on the planet. So a day in the life, best and worst, and is it dangerous? Okay, so a day in the life. Well, I would say, I started in January 21st of 2020. A day in the life was an information overload for about 4 weeks, a lot of abbreviations, a lot of things that I had no idea that were so outside my scope. I came from the professor world, I came from academia, I came from nonprofit. So all of the things, the jargon, the State Department language. So it was a lot of onboarding. And then by the time I felt great about it, it was COVID. So,
That's right. I
it
was
was
just
like, okay,
thinking
pack up
about
your
that.
stuff. This Thursday we're out.
Yes.
So so I wouldn't say I've had the most typical experience. However, I was an implementing partner before this, so I am very familiar with the work. So I would say, a typical day in the life would look something like, for me, talking to leagues and federations and finding people, athletes who are interested in doing good in the world, who are interested in our foreign policy priorities like women's empowerment, disability rights, environmentalism and sustainability, refugees and migration. And so finding those athletes who we can then send abroad, and there would be sort of a cyclical, weekly kind of balance of talking to leagues, sending the athletes, working with embassies, implementing the programs. In 2020, it was all about innovation and flexibility and figuring out how to survive in this, what was a very in-person, personal, intimate environment to something that lives on screen. And so, how do we fast forward? And so for us, it was, okay, people need physical activity, people need out, people need community, people need something besides just, Netflix. So it was figuring out how to take advantage of these athletes who were sitting at home and also not training, Olympics canceled, Paralympics canceled. So we created some virtual programs to talk about important issues. So we used athletes as really advocates or ambassadors for the work that we do. So it's kind of a typical day. There is no typical day because I've only lived 1 year, and it's best and worst part of the job. The best part of the job are that I would say, I've worked a lot of different jobs in my life. I've been working since I was 16, a million things, trying to find the right balance between sport and social change. And so I've worked retail, I've been a lifeguard, I've done a million different things in my life. And I would say the greatest part about State Department, really, truly the people. I have an amazing boss and an amazing team that I work with, and I feel like people really care about the mission. And so, everyone comes and they show up and they give their best every day, and I can really appreciate that. So I would say that's the best part of the job, is the people that we work with, and you can tangibly see the impact that's made on the lives of the communities where we are and where the athletes travel, and the feedback that we get from the surveys and the embassies is just truly, these are once in a lifetime moments for people. And it, just like my life was changed in 2005 through the power of sport in China, it just changed the trajectory of so many people. And so that's also the best part. The worst part, I think for me, I was so invested in the field. I mean, I would say for 7 years, I lived 6 months out doing and being with the people and traveling to different countries and implementing the programs. So for me, I really miss being out there with the communities. And so now I'm the one calling people to go, when before I was the one being called to go. So I think that's probably a little bit of a transition for me. And dangerous, yes, I've been on sports diplomacy programs that were a little bit dangerous in the Middle East a couple of different times. We've had to clear out of gyms, and there's been chatter and we've had to evacuate, but for the most part, it's always worth it. So.
Thank you. Hey, Jennifer, let's ask that question of Gail and Jasmine, and then I can try it too. It's such a good question.
Sure.
I guess more like in person, like after COVID or before COVID, what was a typical day like? Yeah.
Typical, it's hard to describe. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know who you're going to see one day. And there's somebody, a soccer athlete, a World Series Cup winner, a gold medalist from the Ice Olympics. There's somebody who is helping us push the agenda and they've agreed to go abroad and take the American idea abroad and represent the United States and to help prepare them for what they're going to do. But for me, when they come back and they share their stories, they tell their stories. Remember, I'm a storyteller and I love to hear the stories. And they have had the ultimate in what a cultural exchange is when it happens, when two different cultures blend together and they have friendships for life. Just seeing that happen from the smallest detail of the application. Sometimes I've had the opportunity to read the applications and be a part of the selection process of when people apply for the exchange programs, to hearing about the friendships the families have made, to coming back home only to find out they want to go back. And when it happens on both sides of the globe, and I've played a small part in it, that's the most exciting. One of my most exciting things is when the Cultural Programs Division has artists come to the United States and they, singers, dancers, hip hop artists, break dancers, instrumentalists, vocalists. I love the music arts. I love the performing arts. So to be able to see that being used as a tool by the United States government to bridge the gap, I think that's wonderful. And so you just never know what's going to happen at work. Of course, what we've trained and prepared for, but every day is different. I meet people from all over the world. My Facebook page is crazy because it's people from all over the world, names I can't barely pronounce, but I remember the experiences and it's a lot of fun. No more dangerous than being downtown before COVID. You might go outside and somebody's exercising their freedom of speech. There could be somebody protesting right in front of the State Department. The media is there. So crowds, things of that nature. But it's a great gig. I have no complaints.
Jasmine, what's a typical day like in the life of a Pickering fellow?
So, as a life of a Pickering fellow, and then I can attest to being an intern at state. Like others have said, there's no typical day. I remember during my fellowship, sometimes we would be on the hills in congressional members' offices. You never know who could be visiting the State Department that day. I believe the Secretary of State gave a speech while I was at state that we could attend. There's just so many different things and you never know what you're going to get involved in, what projects you're going to work on. As a Pickering fellow right now, I'm in grad school, virtual grad school, so that's really interesting. It's very different. But I am excited for what I'm learning, what I'm doing in grad school. So yeah, and hopefully in the future it'll be back in person post COVID, and I'm excited for the career that I'll have once I go abroad. So
That's that's really great. Yeah, as I recall, grad school was like one of the busiest times of my life because you're just doing so much and you're trying to focus on what's at hand, which is getting a degree, which is really hard. But then you're thinking about what you have to do after at college. You just tend not to think of it that much, right? But in grad school, okay, I've got to get the job, I've got to get a career, and anyway. So uh, for me, a typical day, now this is after like 30 plus years of work, and maybe I am too nostalgic. Maybe I'm forgetting the pain, but I swear in some of my much earlier jobs where I was not so responsible for, especially for budget issues, uh, I really, really enjoyed those, especially ones where I was able to, like Gail was mentioning, to meet different people, Americans who were representing the U.S. on a volunteer basis, for example, or being able to interact with people in different countries of the world and telling them, telling about America's story. That was really neat. And so the reason why I hesitated when you're talking about, someone's asked about the path between being in high school and being an ambassador, along the way, there's some really historic moments and inspiring moments. But the higher and higher up you go, the more you deal with budget issues, the more you deal with people issues, human resources issues, and then big unsolvable problems, like call them policy issues. So the more experience and as you take additional jobs, it expected to be able to solve unsolvable problems. And so that's kind of ominous, but still, no matter what, there is always like unexpected joy each day. You never know who is going to stop by the office. Sometimes when you go out on very interesting visits where you're speaking or you're advocating. And in terms of danger, it's funny. Yes, I've been in dangerous situations, but you don't feel it that much when you're there, when you're experiencing it. Without being specific, I've been at one post where I had a serious death threat, and there's nothing much I could do about it. I could have just left the country, and the security officer said, "No, we're just telling you there's a death threat. Don't take it personal." It's like a specific death threat, but don't take it personally. And at the time, I didn't think about it. Of course, it's very, normally careful person, but I continued to engage because that was permissible. I guess the closest I ever saw anything really, really dangerous, thank goodness, I've never been in any terrible mishaps, was during the bombing of the Iraqi foreign ministry when I was in Baghdad. And actually, it was a couple of other Iraqi government buildings far away. But after that, I learned that when a bomb goes off, even if it's a mile away, it can seem like it is right next to you. And I was not at the embassy compound. I was on a U.S. military base close by, and was walking outside. Actually, I was walking with the gentleman who was the head of the census office. He's actually a civil service person. He was the head of the census office until a few days ago, but back then he was a policy advisor. And we're walking outside of them. Bomb went off, and I'm not a jumpy person, believe it or not. The bomb went off, and we just hit the ground and looked at each other, and we realized, okay, well, it's nowhere near us. We're okay. We're dignified. We're dignified people. But the key to dealing with danger is to take to be very responsible especially when you're overseas, to listen to what your security officer says, particularly if the areas that you should not go to, and to make sure that if you're a supervisor, that you don't put any of your staff in a situation where they can be injured or threatened. There's always another day to do something. You don't necessarily have to do it if there are particular warnings. Like I said, when you're in the situation, you tend not to think about it. You tend not to think about it in the sense of, oh my gosh, because you have a course of action that you can usually take.
Great. Are you wanting a new question, or did you want me to answer that one?
Yeah. Oh my
New
goodness,
question?
we're up to 7:55. Is it okay? Are people still interested for us to continue for a few more minutes? Is that okay, Grace?
Yeah, chiming in, absolutely. Please continue.
All right. Do you get to travel a lot? So I think this will vary a little bit between foreign service and civil service, and even contractor. And there was one question about what a contractor is. And so I can just answer that real quick before this
Please.
travel thing. So a contractor is someone who's not employed directly by the State Department. There are contract companies that the State Department contracts through to hire employees. And that's how I started out. So you work for another company at the State Department.
But sometimes that is a very good way to find out about what kinds of jobs that you like. Because if you're a contractor, you can try one experience. Then if you don't like it, you can try to do something a little bit different, and you get to know different people as well. Regarding travel, you can choose to travel as much or as little as you want to, whether it's for the State Department, or in life. And there's sometimes some periods of your life where you don't want to travel. There are other periods where you're much freer to travel. So for example, I've been in this particular job the last couple of years, and frankly, I've been overseas so much, I haven't traveled much in the US. So it was my real thrill and honor to be able to go to cities within the US, some that I had not seen. And when I'm overseas, some people volunteer to travel to other countries from wherever they're at overseas. I tended to want to stay in that country and get to know that country really well. And we didn't really take that many vacations in other parts of the region as well. But it's really how you want to shape it. Other thoughts about travel? Ashley, you were mentioning that you traveled.
Yeah, I would say, well, my travel has changed. So it used to be as an implementing partner, it used to be, leading the camps and clinics and developing curriculum and meeting with the teams of people. And now it's more finding the people to go and do those projects. And I saw in the question it was, can you go anywhere? Are you sent certain places? Yeah, so a lot of the times it was by invitation from mostly program alumni who were doing great work abroad and who needed someone to come and sort of infuse the work that they were doing or deliver equipment or help support the local leaders. That was oftentimes what we were doing, is that there's someone fantastic in country and we're just there to support them in a way or deliver some kind of presentation or equipment. And so I think it's by invitation more so than us choosing or prescribing or implementing or saying this is what you need to do and where you need to do it. And so I appreciate that part. And I would say now my travel is more as a spokesperson role, going and meeting with different leagues or the U.S. Olympic Committee or someone like that. So to deliver the message of what is sports diplomacy and why does it matter. So it's more of a spokesperson, domestic, maybe internationally at some point. But domestic messaging around what is sports diplomacy.
If we can do like one more question, is that okay? I'm fine time-wise, but if the schedule is normally for about an hour, I think maybe we should have one more question.
Sure. Okay, so last question. In your opinion, is it better to take the foreign service exam right after college or wait? This person said they have heard that it is better to become a diplomat in your second or third career, but I would like to hear from an actual foreign service officer.
Sure. So on the one hand, you want to take the exam while a lot of your substantive knowledge is really fresh in your mind. I took it when I was 25. That was like 3 years out of college. And even then, I had to review. Actually, what I reviewed was my high school AP US History and my high school AP English. Took the notes, looked through the notes. I had one of the old textbooks and reviewed that. And that helped tremendously for the Foreign Service exam. If I had taken the exam 10 years on, I think I would have flunked that exam because I am very bad at grammar. And it's easy to forget data if you're not constantly reviewing it. So my suggestion is to try to start taking it, soon out of college, and I don't think it costs anything. It's been free for years just to get familiar with it. On the other hand, it is kind of good to see the world a little bit before you kind of settle into what could be a longer term career. Many people do that. I worked in radio for a few years and in broadcasting, also in worked for an investment bank, a little bit for law enforcement. Just had a chance to try different things, different views, and it made me much better prepared for foreign service. But there's some people who join right out of college. There are other people who join in their 50s. You can join up until you're 60 years old. Many people will join the civil service. Some people will be a contractor, then they'll be civil service. Then they might try foreign service, or they might try one overseas tour. Some people will do foreign service and they say, that's not for me. I don't really want to be doing all this bagpacking and losing connections with family and friends back home if I'm away for years. I would much rather be in one area, much rather be in DC or work for a US passport agency in another city, for example, or work for the US UN office in New York. So many, like I said, many different paths. And I saw one earlier question was, what can I do to stand out? Well, my advice is whatever career path you end up choosing and whatever organization you end up working for, of course, you want to excel in the qualifications for that, but you want to show that you're a well-rounded person. So for example, I was really surprised when I joined, because I just didn't have much background to it, that other people kind of had unusual backgrounds as well. There was one person when I first started who had been a newspaper editor in Nevada. There was somebody else who had been a musical conductor in Minnesota. There was a journalist for USA Today. One of my first bosses was like a physics major or something like that. There was somebody else who went to the Boston, what is it, the Fine Arts, the museum school for undergrad, for his undergrad. So it's really, if you come from a very different background and have gone through all different paths. There was one person I know who like prepared Volkswagen Beetles for a career before he joined, like Berkeley and then Beetles, Volkswagen Beetles, and then joined the State Department. So it's a wonderful way. I'm not saying it's an excuse. It's been for me. It's been an excuse to have a really multifaceted life.
Great. Thank you, Robert. And I think I'll just mention, because I've seen so many of these questions, a lot of people are asking, what is the best major? What are the best classes to take? What kinds of jobs are there? And I think we've said this earlier, but there are so many different paths to the State Department, so many different career fields, so many different degrees that you can have, if you even have to have a degree. There are just so many different ways to get into the State Department. So.
And I see that you put an email there, Grace, which is great. Youth programs at state.gov. Yeah, so shoot your questions and thoughts and just pass them around. I'm happy to answer some, and I'll bet that Jasmine or Ashley or Gail could also answer some. Very happy to do that. Really,
yes, please email me.
Yeah,
sorry.
You're a great moderator, by the way, Jennifer. And thank you so much, Jasmine and Ashley and Gail and Grace. Thank you so much for inviting us, and kudos to the society, and congratulations to you all for where you have gotten so far. And I wish you all just wonderful life and career paths.